One, good. Whether they're derived from logic, morals, or religion, laws and policies are established for the betterment of a population. In a democracy, if an outstanding number of people demand a policy that's not detrimental to the livelihood of others, and the opposition to this policy is minimal, then this law should be implemented. Although this is common in society, equally as common are the situations where a policy has already been implemented, but many are opposed to. One example of this is the push for the legalization of MMA in New York, the only state in the entirety of North America to ban the sport of mixed martial arts. New York and its politicians are receiving a lot of criticism for their inability to repeal the ban on MMA. Although years ago, Ontario, Canada had the same policy, after an outcry from the population, according to Ontario.ca, as of 2010, MMA would be legal in the province, leaving New York as one of the last few major places in this general vicinity banning the sport. With a few noteworthy facts and interesting ideas, I'll explain why MMA should be legalized in New York. First, I'll explain why this policy should be abolished. Next, I'll propose what can be done to change the bill. And lastly, I'll illustrate how these efforts and actions can satisfy both fighters and fans of MMA. Mixed martial arts is considered the fastest growing sport in the world, with an increasing number of fans showing interest in the combat fighting. Its popularity is only getting higher. In this nature, as more people show interest in the sport, the number of those seeking a career in it is also on the rise. Although most states and regions give their citizens the opportunity to chase their goals as professional MMA fighters, the one place with this exception, however, is New York. Even though the grappling art of jiu-jitsu, wrestling, or boxing itself are all legal in New York, however, for some reason, when you try to put all these sports together, that's when you've crossed the line. So, recently, New York legislators were presented with the bill to repeal the ban, but according to MMAfighting.com, for the 8th straight year, the bill to legalize MMA will not be brought to the vote in the New York State Assembly. This is especially unfortunate because many believe that it would be the year where the bill will finally pass. This is so because, according to the New York Times, Sheldon Silver, the former Speaker of the New York Assembly, thought to be the reason why the bill was never passed in the first place, was arrested after obtaining millions of dollars due to bribes and kickbacks. To many, if not for Silver, this would be people would be free to enjoy the sport of MMA in New York in the vicinity of their own state. But after failing to pass again, it would seem that maybe other factors are at fault here. Assuming that integrity is a virtue that we all have, and logic is used to determine whether the bill should pass, MMA would be legal in New York. So the fact that the bill has not been implemented or approved yet, despite all the best efforts to do so, begs to bring the question or the thought that maybe corruption may be a factor here. According to MMAJunkie.com, 76 is the figure needed to get a bill out of the 105-member Democratic Conference and onto the Assembly floor. But after representatives of the sport, the UFC proposed an amended bill to secure victory, Democratic Assembly leader Joseph Morrell would insist that the MMA bill lost momentum as legislators ran out of time. Also from the same source. Due to unlikely scenarios such as that, it is likely that some of these politicians do lack integrity. Therefore, the best thing to do would be to relieve these politicians of their duties. It seems that with some of these officials in the way, New York fans will never get what they want. So a solution could be to maybe formal protests outside of City Hall, urging politicians to, maybe resign. This would force them to take note of a growing demand. Another solution could be communicating with like-minded officials, having them put pressure on their colleagues that are opposed to the sport and try to overturn the ban. These actions and more can help change the state of MMA in New York. It is acknowledged that sometimes for good to occur, negatives must be taken away. In other words, for people to be able to enjoy the sport, some representatives should no longer be able to speak for the people. After changes are made, opportunities would in turn be created. The opportunity to have a professional fighter's license in the state would be created. Jobs would be available, not just for the fighters, but also for set crews, tasked with erecting structures such as the cages and other objects needed by promoters of the sport. And here I have a video of a short video. Excuse me. A short video explaining MMA in New York.
The bottom line is this: the most important and powerful man in all of New York politics is the guy you referenced in the beast, Sheldon Silver. It's very simple. Until he dies or is out of office, MMA will never be allowed in the state of New York. And here's the comical thing about it. They talk about the culinary union. The Fertitta brothers employ tons of union workers at their casinos out west. They just don't use that one casino. And anyone that's fighting for the casinos, you're robbing New York union workers of working right here and earning a living. So it's political, it's a joke, it has nothing at all to do with the sport or the nature of the sport. I assume, talking to a lot of those politicians, you can be thinking the same thing, or am I wrong?
Yes and no. On the one hand, Assembly Member Wright pointed out to me, New York uses unionized labor at their venue. So if they did a show at MSG, unionized labor is the one that works there. But more importantly, there is a slight misconception about Sheldon Silver. This was told to me by 7th Democratic lawmakers. He doesn't like MMA, but with the institutional blockages gone, he can be persuaded, that we're very, very adamant about it.
One thing everybody forgets about this is that it's not just about the UFC. There's so many smaller promotions that create jobs, create opportunities for fighters that would open up in New York. Because New York's a big state. It's not just about MSG and New York City.
And if we're really thinking about violence, if they're really saying it's too violent, we need to cut down on violence, studies have shown there's been on average 10 deaths a year in boxing since 1900. Okay, where do we stop?
Listen, it's a joke, and I'll say it again, I know this is a fact. It's closer than it ever was this past year at the vote, and unilaterally one guy said no, and that guy is Sheldon Silver. If you want to be mad at somebody, be mad at him and nobody else.
Perhaps the greatest gift gained from the legalization of MMA in New York would just be choice. Having the ability as a New Yorker to compete anywhere you want, from the furthest state away to the neighborhood or a few blocks down, as opposed to forcing fans and fighters to always have to travel away to enjoy their passion. This would be much appreciated. To retaliate, the people should be given what they want. Our potential as humans are greater than many are aware of. If a significant number of the population is making a demand, then this should be acknowledged and attempts should be made to see it through. But unfortunately, due to corruption and personal agendas by some, what is only fair cannot be achieved. Even though MMA is still illegal in New York State till today, all hope is not lost. If you would like to help out in the fight to legalize MMA, according to MMAJunkie.com, you should contact some New York State Assembly members, including Carl Heastie, the newest state speaker. Another effort to make is to sign a petition on UFC.com/New York. There, with your name and email, you can inform legislators to legalize the sport. With these efforts, maybe sooner rather than later, we may all be able to enjoy mixed martial arts in the state of New York. Thank you.